Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Sex Teacher Anything About Sacred Sex. I'm Sherry Winston, and I will be your sex teacher and guide tonight to answering what I can for you about the subject of sacred sex. And before I even sort of launch into the questions, of which I've already got some, because some people answered the survey who aren't going to be here tonight, wanted to make sure their questions were answered. So we have some questions from them. And of course, we're always happy to have questions from all of you. So just post your questions as you think of them, as you have them, and I will try and get through as many of them as I can in our session tonight. But the first question I'm going to ask is actually my question. And I'm going to ask the question, the basic foundational question of what is sacred sex? And so my first question is really my own. What is sacred sex? And the answer is that it's really whatever that means for you. That's how I look at it. I don't think there's one answer or there's one way to make sex part of your spiritual life. But I'm going to say what it is again for me. And that is when I studied sex, and I studied this after I'd been a midwife for many years, it was very clear to me that sex and birth were intimately entwined. And as a midwife for over 20 years, I think birth is sacred. I was at the incarnation of 500 human beings. So how could birth be sacred if the act that makes it of sex isn't sacred? So to me, there's always been this foundational idea that our sexuality is an integral part of who we are, and our spirituality is as well. So to me, these things have always been joined. When I retired from birthing babies and I started really studying sexuality in more depth, I did a number of classes and workshops and read a lot of books from different sacred sexuality traditions. And when I talk about the sacred sexuality traditions, I mean things like Tantra, Taoist sacred sexuality traditions, some Native American ones, and some cross-cultural study of many different cultures. And what I started to realize was that, first of all these cultures recognized sex as something holy, that was something sacred, that had a spiritual dimension to it. And without going into sort of an orthodox anything, because I'm just not, I borrow and I pick and I put things together and create these sort of integral models. What I started to understand was that while there may be some very different ideas about sexuality in these different cultures, there were some things that were totally the same. Every single one of those cultures that revered sexuality also had gender equality, for example, but they also had some ideas about sexual energy, about the purpose and the function of sex, and where we could go with it. So here we are in this little webinar where we're going to talk about sacred sexuality, and I'm going to be drawing on all of the history, all of the traditions, and hopefully we'll find out what it means for you, because that's really what I'm about. It's not about me imposing my ideas of spirituality onto anyone else. It's about helping you find your own path. So to me, the connecting the sacred or the spiritual, however you want to frame that, and whatever that means to you with your experience of the erotic is my intention. So let me start on some questions here. And this is one that somebody had sent in to us. So Carla wants to know, what differentiates sacred sex from regular sex? And I think that question would only come up in a culture like ours that has separated the sexual from the spiritual. I think in primal cultures, those things were so inherently connected that nobody would even ask that question. But for me, what separates the two is when you are integrating an aspect of intentional sacredness into your sexuality, where your sexual experiences become part of your spiritual path. You know, in Western culture, those things have been so separate that the idea that sex is sacred is kind of radical. It really is, because Western culture has said that in order to be spiritual, you have to transcend the body. You have to get away from the body and its lusts and its desires and its earthy, dirty, right, dirt, earth, lusts. And sacred sexuality says, no, those are the path. Those are the doorway to connecting with yourself, connecting with a partner or partners, and in fact, not just connecting with all life, but connecting with whatever your concept of the divine is. So for me, that's what I think of what sacred sex is and what is different from so-called regular sex. So I think regular sex doesn't have that intention and doesn't have that dimension. All right, good. So here's a question that I've gotten from a number of people in different forms, but it's basically, how do I bring this up with my partner? How do I get buy-in from my partner? If I want to start exploring sacred sex and bringing this dimension of the holy and the spiritual into my erotic life, how do I get my partner to want to be a part of that? And it's a really good question. So let's start with this idea that our sexual relationship with our partner or partners is really an ongoing learning journey, right? We're there together to co-create this experience and this form of connection. And if we're going to be really good at it, if we're going to have mastery of our erotic experience, we're going to always be bringing new things in, new ways to explore, new skills, new tools. And so the way I see bringing the sexual tools in is by starting to kind of look at them and asking, what could I do that would be fun for my partner, that would be a turn on for my partner? So when I talk about the spiritual tools, I'm talking about things like sacred intention, creating sacred space, using practices that incorporate things like meditation with your arousal and your erotic energy, playing with sexual energy. So those are all different things that we can bring in. So the first question about buy-in would be, what do you think your partner would really like? Creating sacred space is often a great way to start creating an experience our partners are going to really enjoy. So maybe, for example, you would say to your partner, you know, I want to have some very special sex. I want to have some sex that's a little different from what we usually do, and I'm going to make a special space for that. And if your partner resonates with the idea of sacredness, then call it a sacred space, call it a temple. If your partner is more not on that same wave, let's say I'm going to make a really special, beautiful place for our sexual encounter. And then take some time and create a temple space in wherever it is that you have sex. It might be lighting candles, it might be bringing in flowers, it might be putting on certain kinds of music that you feel brings that right dimension. And then create a ritual. And that's one of our tools for creating sacredness in anything. Create a ritual. So you might, again, this is all, you're just making this up, right? This is just what might resonate. Say to your partner, sweetie, you're going to go take a shower. And when you come out, you're going to be greeted by this erotic priest or priestess who's going to welcome you into this temple. And I think most of our partners would be like, yeah, okay, that sounds good, and go along with that. And that would be a way of introducing it. You could also introduce it by sharing a course with them, like the course we have coming up, our Sizzling Sacred Sex course, or just sharing this video with them. So there's lots of ideas there. All right, more questions. So, here we go. Here's another one that I wanted to get at the beginning because it says, I'm a beginner. Where do I start? And so I think you want to start with focusing on yourself. Now, I know a lot of people think that our sexual experience is about what we do with other people. And it certainly is, that what we do with other people is a important and compelling part of our erotic lives. But where you might want to start is with yourself, is looking at your relationship with your own sexuality, looking at your beliefs around spirituality, and a lot of times that might be some of the religious ideas we were raised with, which can often be sex negative. And it might be that we want to create a ritual just with ourselves where we start welcoming in our own inner priest or priestess, our own inner experience of the divine erotic. It might really start with a very hot and sacred date with yourself where you are able to just focus on yourself, your own experience, and really bringing reverence to it. There's lots of ways we can do that. We can repeat body positive mantras. I love my body. I love the pleasure it can give me. My pleasure is sacred. So we can have thoughts like that. We can have affirmations like that. We might want to look at where the divide is between our erotic life and our spiritual life, and then envision a session that would start healing that. So those are just some of the things. I think we'll probably talk about lots more as we go. But I hope those are some ideas that can get you started. So Taylor says, I'm in my early 20s and have zero sex drive after years of pelvic floor dysfunction. I'm sorry. That can do that. Can I get my sex drive back? So this is a great question. And for some people, it might seem like this doesn't have a lot to do with sacred sex. But our spiritual tools are things we can use to heal our erotic, a history where our erotic experience has been traumatized for whatever reason. So one of the things I would really recommend, especially because there's been pelvic floor issues, your pelvic floor is sort of it's like your inner pump for your erotic energy. And here's one of the things all the sacred sexuality traditions understand, is that we are beings not just of matter but of energy. And so a lot of the sacred sex practices are about working with, playing with really, our erotic energy. And I would also think about bringing in some heart love energy. So just for starters, you might want to do some practices where you put one hand on your genitals, on the outside of your pelvic floor, and you do some breathing, nice deep breathing, gently pulsing your pelvic floor muscles. You might put your other hand on your heart. So you start connecting that genital energy and the heart energy, and just starting to imagine that you're running this circuit of energy. You might see light, you might feel heat. However it occurs for you is good. And just do that as a practice. Perhaps you want to create an altar dedicated to healing from your past experience. That would be a way to do sacred healing. And you put on the altar all the things that would symbolize that healing, the revitalization of your sexual energy, maybe a red candle or a beautiful symbol of your vulva. And that before you have erotic encounters with yourself or your partner, that you spend a few minutes sitting at that altar, praying. Praying, chanting, saying positive, self-loving, healing affirmations, welcoming your sex drive back in, and then doing some very, very gentle experiences of starting to run that erotic energy, doing it in a very slow, nurturing way. And again, you might want to do this solo first. You might really want to start with yourself as opposed to doing this with a partner. You can do all of the things I'm talking about by yourself or with a partner. And even if you are partnered, I think it's really important that we have our own experiences of solo sex, because that's where we do our learning and our healing, and where we don't have to pay attention to somebody else. So those are a few ideas. And I will just add, just on the healing level. If you've never worked with a pelvic floor physical therapist, you might want to consider that. And when you feel ready, you can start doing some internal touching yourself. So that would be gently cultivating your erotic energy, getting yourself turned on, putting your fingers inside, and again, breathing, pulsing, envisioning light, heat, warmth, and start to find if there are some places that feel numb, that feel painful, and just start to gently and lovingly awaken them and ease them. So there's lots of ways you can play with that. So let's see, what else? What other questions have you got? Marnie says, I've been single for many years after divorce. When in the dating world, how can I eventually discover if a potential partner believes in sacred sex and conscious relationship? Well, that's a good question. I mean, the first thing I would say is think about where you're meeting people. If you're really interested in sacred sex, you might want to go to gatherings or conferences or classes or workshops that focus on sacred sex, where you're much more likely to meet people who are interested in having erotic experiences that have that dimension. So for starters, you might want to kind of just look at what pool you're fishing in. The next, I think that the early conversations you're going to have with somebody are going to give you some really good clues about whether they're interested in having conscious relationship. And you're going to have conversations with somebody. So I think in those conversations, you can start bringing up these things. Have they ever heard of sacred sex? What does the term mean to them? What have they ever thought about it before? Is this a new concept for them? And even if they've never thought about it, doesn't mean I would, exclude them, but I would see how they respond to that. Are they interested, or do they think it's weird? And those are the kinds of things. I think you're going to get lots of clues. But I wouldn't really wait a long time to start bringing these topics up. I think this is actually kind of interesting first or second date material that you can start to discuss about what you might want to be interested in pursuing together, what it is you're looking for, what your intentions are in a relationship. And, for me, I would really want to find somebody whose intention was to have a conscious relationship. So good luck with that. Daniela says, my boyfriend comes so quickly during sex, usually within the first 5 minutes or sooner if I tell him to. How can he increase his longevity? Well, that's a great question. And again, our sexual skills are things we learned and can learn. So things like, how do we cultivate our erotic energy? How do we hold on to that erotic energy? How do we move it to different places within us? Are all things that we can think of as basic erotic skills that can be part of the sacred experience. But for starters, to me, this is just sort of basic sexual energy skills. So one of the things that for a lot of men, their erotic energy often starts in their genitals, in the sex centers of their brain and their genitals, and then it kind of stays there, and it just gets so intense, and then it bursts out, and they ejaculate. So what I would encourage you to do with him, and for him to do with himself, so he could be doing this also in his solo sex, because that's where he can retrain himself, and start playing with bringing the erotic energy out of his genitals and into the rest of his body. So that might be things like stroking up his belly or up his spine, or pulling the energy down his legs with touch, those sorts of things, helping him visualize that energy, helping him move it. So those are some of the things. I would encourage him to be working with his pelvic floor muscles as well. And what I would really encourage him to do in his solo sex is to slow down that experience so that he gets to practice bringing his erotic energy up. And you can think of that, you can think of it like a set of stairs. So if you had 10 stairs, right, and Step number 1 is just a little turned on, and 9 is almost coming, and 10 is having an orgasm. So what you want to encourage him to do, both by himself and with you, is start learning to slow his journey down so he can identify, I'm on step 5, I'm on step 7, I'm on 9. So he's getting to 9 really fast. So we want to help him learn how to bring his erotic energy down. And so that might be decreasing stimulation. That might be movement, any kind of movement really that's going to move his energy out of his genitals. So slow movements instead of fast ones would be an example. Playing with breath in the sense of having him try to take deeper, slower breaths. And again, using that breath as a tool to kind of guide his erotic energy so that it's not so concentrated in his genitals. So these are just learnable skills. Well, they're learnable skills. And think about it as learning how to play an instrument. So he can learn how to shift that, slow that down, and change it, and you can help him. Marnie's got another question. She says, how can I get over my own body hang-ups, self-consciousness of BS conditioning, thinking I have to be thin, flat tummy, look perfect, as well as not yet being truly comfortable with my own genitals? So these are challenges that I would say pretty much almost all women in our culture have, which is sad, but it's really true. So you're really not alone in this experience. And again, since we're focusing on sacred sex, I'm going to focus on how you could use some of your spiritual sexual tools to further these things. But there's lots of ways you can do it without even going into the realm of the sacred. But I'm going to start with that because that's where our focus is. So let's start with that, comfortable with your own genitals. Your genitals are totally sacred. Your whole body is. This is holy. This is the gateway to life. You know, we all grew inside the body of a woman, and we got birthed, possibly not vaginally, but we got birthed, and historically it would be vaginally, through this amazing orifice that you have. So I would start with thinking about creating some rituals and some practices to help you start loving your genitals. And again, I'm a big fan of altars and creating, they don't have to be big elaborate rituals, but just a simple ritual where you start to appreciate, you start to reprogram your thinking around your genitals. And the same thing goes with the rest of your body. Your body can give you enormous pleasure. How awesome is that? It's not about what it looks like, it's about what it feels like. So I think it's about shifting our focus from an external, what does it look like from outside, to an internal, what does it feel like inside? And I think that's a powerful tool. So focusing on your pleasure. And again, how can you look at your pleasure as a prayer, as a meditation, as something that is holy, right? Your pleasure is this amazing gift that experience of the ecstatic can bring you into that feeling of universal oneness with everything that exists. And when we're there, we're not being self-conscious about our body or what it looks like. We are being the divine. The divine is in us. We're connected to it. And so it's really about, again, learning how to play your own instrument so that you get to that high-level, deep erotic trance. And we can use lots of mind, body, heart tools as well as our spiritual tools to get there. All right, more questions? Lay them on us. So Brigitte asked, do you need to be able to have an orgasm to experience this, as I have not been able to? So let me start with that the not being able to have an orgasm piece of that question. So the important thing, and I actually like how you phrase it, you haven't been able to yet. Up until now, you haven't had that experience, and I really want to offer you that that's a learnable experience. And I really would love to encourage you to think of it as like playing the piano or speaking a foreign language. It just is something you haven't learned how to do yet, and that you're going to learn skills and you're going to practice them, and sooner or later that orgasmic experience will happen. And you don't have to have an orgasm to experience the feeling of being divine, of being a divine being, of feeling that spark of your own vital life force. So any arousal, I think, any pleasure are all parts of what can be a divine experience. It's really how you hold it. It's about your intention. So when you have the intention to create an experience of sacredness, and you use your arousal energy to get into this altered state of consciousness, I think that's more likely to bring you to orgasm. Anyway, but when you start playing with that in that way, I think it's not about the orgasm. So that's my experience. It's not about the orgasm. It's about the connection and the experience. So, and I invite you to check out my Art of Female Orgasm class, because that might help you find your path to orgasm. Oh, and I'm gonna go. Just Andrea's noting, yes, not about the orgasm. It's really not. And our culture is so orgasm focused, but it's not about the orgasm. It's about the connection. Okay, Danielle says, I find it difficult to get my mind focused during intercourse, as well as when my boyfriend goes down on me. If I'm not focused, I know I will not have an orgasm, and I usually give up. How can I keep my mind focused and in tune with the pleasure that's going on and not with outside noise? So I'm going to just say, I think, again, this is one of the really common issues that a lot of us deal with. We live in this world that's always stimulating this front part of our brain, that thinking, planning, executive office part of our brain that does the judging, the critiquing, that front office, the executive office of our brain. Hard to get it to go offline because we're just constantly using it and stimulating it and rewarding it, and that's the part that we're supposed to be so valuable, this front thinky brain. So how do we get that to go offline? And often what takes it offline can be things like self-consciousness, anxieties or fears, or about our bodies or our genitals, beliefs, and here we get into the spiritual again, because a lot of the religious beliefs, cultural beliefs we're raised with are often very sex negative. So, and then we can just have anxiety that, it's taking too long, my partner's getting bored, I'm not doing it right, all of these things. And that's a lot. So how do we get out of that? We get out of that by using all of our toolkits. So we've got our body toolkit of breathing, sound, movement, vision, touch, smell, and taste, all of those things. We've got our mind tools of intention and awareness and imagination. We've got our spiritual tools of creating sacred intention, of making a ritual, creating altars, creating that sacred space. So first I'd say, think about which tools really resonate with you. And I'm always encouraging people, find what works for you and use it. I will say I think the sort of basic tools in our toolkit are breath, sound, and movement. So I will start with that. So one of the things, and you can do this as a practice, this can be part of a spiritual practice or just practice, right? You can think of it as I'm just, practicing making music, or I'm doing a practice that, like a meditation practice, is part of a spiritual practice. But either way you hold the idea of practice, practice is the key. So create that ritual. And again, I'm such a big fan of the idea of temple space, of making a beautiful space, and that there's no computers there's no phones, there's no blinking lights, there's beauty, and one of the things that helps keep us focused is not being distracted by being in an environment that's full of distractions. So don't have the dirty laundry visible. Don't have your phone in the room. Don't have clocks visible. Right? All of those things bring us back into the sort of mundane reality. And then when we're having the erotic experience, again, whether this is solo or with a partner, focus on your breath. Let your breath bring you back into your body. Use your sound. When you're making sounds of pleasure, it's hard to be thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this, or what is my partner thinking? Are they bored? My butt looks fat, whatever. If any of those thoughts arise, when you're breathing and making sounds of pleasure, that just obliterates them. And sound also amplifies pleasure. So focus on what gives you more pleasure. Movement, particularly your pelvic floor muscles, is a really great way of getting back in your body. And the mind tool of awareness is really important, and that would be noticing you've gone, noticing you've left. Oh, I'm thinking about the email. Oh, I'm noticing I need to dust. I'm worrying about how I look. I'm worrying if I'm doing it right. Notice that that's happening as soon as you can, and then do 10 deep sounding breaths, pulsing your pelvic floor muscles, so that right, just bring it back in. Envision your energy moving into your body. And those are all ways to bring yourself back. And the more you practice, the easier it gets to use those tools. And I'm just looking at Carl is saying the power of sanctuary. So yeah, creating that space in your life, and that's part of what makes things sacred, is that you create that. I love the word sanctuary, of it's sanctified, it's sacred, that you don't let your mundane life intrude. All right, what else do you want to know? Lay the questions on us. How do I achieve deep emotional connection with my lover? It's a good question. Well, for starters, different people feel loved in different ways. So it's useful to understand what makes your partner feel loved and be generous with what that is. I like to be touched. Carl likes to be listened to, my partner, right? So if he wants to create deep emotional connection with me, he knows that the path into that for me is going to be more physical, touch, kinesthetic. I know for him that he wants that empathetic, attentive listenings. And create that environment in your whole relationship. This isn't just about now we're getting in bed together. Now, once you do get into your space together, and again, I'm going to use some ideas about creating sacred connection, is create a ritual that helps you transition from, we're co-parenting our kid, we're running our business, we're cleaning our house and doing errands, going from the mundane. How do you go from that to creating an environment that's going to have that holiness to it? So create a ritual. It'll help us kind of toggle from, again, the brain is in practical mode into the sort of not ephemeral is not the right word, but into that more sensual, potentially ecstatic space. So that might be, the ritual might be that you spend 5 minutes dancing together. Maybe you go take a shower together and do a ritual washing of each other's bodies, which is so sensual and erotic and fun. Um, Maybe you separate and you put on your favorite sexy garb. It doesn't matter if it's, you know, leather or latex or silk or skin, but separate and then come back together in that special outfit that you put on for your encounter. And then when you start your encounter, rather than going into the sort of traditional, well, now we kiss and now we touch bits and then we rub this and then we go here, instead of that script, maybe you would want to start with some breathing and eye gazing. And that could be where you get into a position where your bodies are in alignment, is often useful. Get into that position, look in each other's eyes, and breathe together so that you're inhaling both at the same time and you're exhaling at the same time with some sound, using your pelvic floor muscles, starting to envision that circuit of energy. You might use touch. You might put your hand on each other's hearts, or you might put your hand on each other's genitals, or both. You could put your foreheads together so your third eyes are connected, or you could hold each other so that you're heart to heart. And just take a few minutes and breathe together. And what that's going to do emotionally is going to help you feel connected. And it's also going to start synchronizing your body rhythms and energetically getting you on the same page. Now, the doing that together in the same rhythm and the same pace is a good starter point for connecting. Then what you might want to try is alternating so that one partner is breathing in while the other partner breathes out. And so that you're breathing each other's breath. So you exhale into your partner as your partner inhales, and you go back and forth that way. And that creates another kind of energy circuit. And then do whatever you want, but you're starting from that place of connection. I'm looking. There we go. With sacred sex, how do I make my husband comfortable enough to have it more often? Well, first I might start with a conversation. What are the things that are going on that, so I'm gathering that you have what you consider, sacred or more ritualized or spiritual sex sometimes, but you'd like to have it more. So I would start with a conversation. What's up with him? How does he feel about it? Is there anything that's blocking him? Is there something, a direction he'd like to take your sacred erotic experiences that might be different? I mean, for some people think of sacred sex as being very slow and almost kind of calmly meditative sex. But sacred sex can be what we like to call, sacred monkey fucking, right? I mean, it can be really, really hot and erotic. So I would start to actually just, not when you're having sex, have conversations about what it is and what it could be. So I have some follow-up comments from Andrea. Thank you. He's fearful that it wouldn't remain sacred if you have it too often. Well, that's an interesting belief that you could start to explore. He might try reframing that belief into that it's something that you can have all the time. It's something that you can have every time, or it's something that you can have frequently, because sacred doesn't necessarily mean rare. It can mean special, but you can have really special, amazing sex often. So I would just start to explore if there are maybe multiple ways to have sacred sex. So maybe there's a particular way, and again, Andrea's got some follow-ups. Sacred doesn't mean rare, and he thinks 1 to 3 times a month. So I would explore that. And Carl has a great comment that I want to share. The whole thing about the sacred realm is it's infinitely abundant. It doesn't run out. So I would have conversations with him about that. You know, the thing about our beliefs is our brains are like computers. We can reprogram them. We can get rid of programming that's just not serving, and replace it with more useful programming, like the idea that this is an abundant, ever expanding experience we can have. And in fact, the more often we have it, the better we often get at it, the easier it can become to get to that really connected place, and get to those ecstatic experiences. So I would posit the sort of the opposite, which is, that the more we do it, the more it can become part of our spiritual experience. So lay on us your questions. Lay them upon us. Jess has a question. She says, I haven't had any luck trying breath and energy orgasms. It's difficult to let go and get into it. How can I play with energy in a way where I can feel it? Wonderful question. And I think that the idea of, first of all, the idea of energy, we just have to sort of say, what do we mean by that? And again, all primal cultures the world over thought we have energy systems, that we have circuits and currents, and I believe that we can access that, and we can learn how to amplify it, and we can share it, and we can run it in circuits by ourselves, and we can share those circuits with other people. And again, these are skills that we can develop. So in terms of breath and energy orgasms, those are advanced skills. That's what I would call them for most people. So I would say that you want to, with all of these skills, it's always about taking little steps. So little steps, amplifying your energy circuits, doing practices where you close your eyes, you go inside, you breathe, you make sound, and you direct your energy. I like to think also about what I call cross-training, where you would be doing sort of two things at once. So you might be doing your standard kind of stimulation. At the same time, you're consciously breathing and making sound and pulsing your muscles and envisioning this energy circuit while you're doing your hands-on or partner doing or your vibrator, whatever you're using to stimulate. And then remove the stimulation, keeping the other things going, and just noticing where your erotic energy is. And then if it starts to drop, you put the stimulation back on. And after a while, you're going to discover you can take that stimulation away, and keep your erotic energy going. And so those are some ideas about how you can take some steps toward those experiences. And sooner or later, you can get there. So I think it's totally learnable. But I think often people have this idea that you're just supposed to sort of instantaneously be able to get to these places. And I think some people can, some people have that. But for most of us, it's a learned process. And that's a lot of what I teach about. A lot of what the next course is about, and other courses are about, is about how do we learn, how do we train ourselves to have mastery over erotic energy. All right, another great question. Can you have sacred sex with someone you're not in love with? Well, I believe you can have sacred sex with anyone you want to have sex with, assuming that you're bringing sacred intention to the experience, and they are. So I don't think love per se, as in the sort of in love, big L, capital love, is necessary. But I do think at least a feeling of a caring connection, and that ability to see the divine in someone else, and for them to see it in you. And that can happen with somebody you've just met. You could have a sacred one-night stand. There's nothing about the sacredness that implies it's got to be in a long-term committed relationship. So I think it's really about intention, open-heartedness, and like I said, that ability to go into a space, and again, ritual can help us do this, but to go into a space where you literally are looking in somebody's eyes and you're like, oh my gosh, I see that divine spark in you, and they're seeing it when they look in your eyes, and to me, that's the key element of what makes an encounter holy. Okay. So what else would you like to know? So here's another one. Odile, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right. What are ways to gently bring our partners back to the moment if we notice they went away? Well, actually, in some ways, it's the same thing I was talking about when we notice we've gone away. And again, I think it's really useful, certainly with partners that we're going to have more than a one-night stand with, to have conversations about our sex so that we understand what's going on with them. So it's kind of useful to know why they might be going away. It might be they're distracted. It might be they had some sexual trauma in their past and they're dissociating. So it would be really useful to know if they're just thinking about the errand they forgot to run, or if they're having some sort of recapitulation of a traumatic experience. So that is a conversation that should be happening not while you're having sex. So assuming it's somebody who's just distracted or anxious or inhibited, or some of those sort of little things that take us away, often it can just be as simple as looking them in the eyes, putting your hand on their chest, inviting them to breathe with you, and just, again, using sound and trying to invite them back into that connected energy space. Again, this would be useful to sometimes practice these things. You see, I think with our regular partners, we want to have our sex, and that's like a spontaneous jam session. But just like musicians who want to make good music together, sometimes we're going to rehearse, and we're going to actually sort of like practice a specific skill set. And sometimes we're going to have conversations about the music we're making together. So you might want to practice that skill set. You have what we call a playpen. You make a time and a space to play a learning game. In a way, this is also a way to create ritual. But to say, okay, sometimes I notice I'm not being present, or you're not being present. Let's practice something that will help bring us back and back together. And usually that would be breathing, sounding, and moving together. So you might practice that, and then you have a little cue or shortcut. Maybe it's a little tap on the shoulder. Maybe it's a certain word, connection, or welcome back, or some invitation word, not a telling you what to do word, and that would remind them or invite them to come back into the experience and turn off their front brain. So those are some ideas. Let's see. Anna's wondering, is it too late at my age to learn all of this? Low libido is an issue for me and my husband. Well, I would actually invite you to think of exploring sacred sex and the spiritual dimensions of your erotic life as a way to revive that. Many long-term relationships, it's a challenge to still want to have sex with this person that you've been with for a long time. Whereas Esther Perel says it's hard to want what you have. So how do we develop that? How do we increase desire? And using some of sacred sex practices and understandings can be a great way to do that. So I do think, though, that that libido is an issue, and it is for a lot of us as we get older, or we have health issues, or our life is really distracting, or we're parenting, or we just had a baby. I mean, there's so many things, right, that affect libido. So the first thing we need to do is consciously have the intention, we're back to intention, but consciously have the intention to go into the place of arousal and desire. See, when libido is there, that drives it. Libido is like a flame under your pot of water, and it's just, if your water's already hot, it doesn't take much to turn it up. But when the libido isn't there so much, it's like you've got to go out, collect the wood, and build the fire, right? And that takes conscious choice. Let's say, like, okay, honey, let's spend Sunday afternoon going out collecting the wood and building the fire, and then you go do it. And then once you do that, then you're like, oh, wow, this is pleasurable. This is fun. This is erotic. Then you go to the space. So it's about what draws you. Instead of having libido be the draw, it's conscious choice. And again, I think that the elements of sacred sex are a great way to do that. Okay. Time for a few more questions. I'm just going to say that I'm going to sort of try and stick to the topic. So if there's questions that are really off topic, I'm going to just kind of slide by those for tonight. And maybe we'll get to them in another webinar. Yehuda says, how do we discover this mystic aspect of sex? And what effect does sacred sex have on our life? Well, you know, I wonder if discover the mystic aspect is the frame I would use. I think of it more as that the divine spark is in us. And so to me, it may be not so much about discovering it as about reclaiming it or refinding it. I think we were all born ecstatic, whole, joyous beings, and then life happened to us, and we kind of turned that off. So I think it's in there, and discover is not really, it's a valid word, discover, but it's discovering something that's already in us. So it's not discovering something out there or in some other place. It's exploring and discovering what's inside of ourselves. And again, I think it really begins with intention. Having the intention to create holiness, to have an experience of whatever your perspective is on divinity, of the god or the goddess. So that's what I think about that. And what does it have on your life? Again, this is really up to you, but for me, it's about creating a life that's integrated, that's whole. And I feel very blessed in the sense that my work, my relationships, my life, my spiritual path are all integrated with each other. And for me, that's really important. But I think it can help you feel that way, integrated and connected. So I think we're really all longing for connection. And it's hard to find in this world. We have a very disconnected culture in so very many ways. So I think that these tools are a way of finding pathways to connection. All right. Aw, I'm just going to post this because it's so sweet. Marnie says, I so appreciate how calm, reassuring, loving, wise, and approachable you are, Sherry. Aw, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. I am blessed to be able to do this work and to talk to people about some of the things that are have been profound for me, really profound in my life. And I've been very gifted. I've been given a lot of gifts. That's what I mean by that. In terms of many of my life experiences, my partners. I had the amazing gift of being a midwife for a couple of decades and getting to be present at births and have this amazing teacher of the experience of birth, and then having so many other amazing teachers about sexuality. So to me, if I didn't give that back to you, that would be selfish, right? That wouldn't be fair. So that's really my mission. That's my mission. I'm here to share what has helped me and what I've learned. So I appreciate that you're here to do that with me. Okay, we have time for a few more questions, so now would be the time to give them to us. If there's not much desire for kissing, however the sex is amazing, is there a problem? Well, is it a problem for either of the partners? I mean, if one partner is longing for kissing and the other partner is really not into it, there's a problem in the sense of there's a desire, a discrepancy in desires and the kind of actions and activities that you want to do together. But if both partners are okay with that, then it's fine. I would, again, if one partner is wanting the kissing, I will say a couple of things in favor of kissing, which is that it's one of those activities that is incredibly intimate, and it's incredibly connecting, and it's one of the behaviors that we get from what I call the falling in love template. So this is the way I look at it. So when we fall madly in love with somebody, we do all these behaviors. It's basically like obsessive compulsive disorder. You know, we think about them all the time. The phone rings. We think it might be them, and we get all excited, and we see them, and we're just like, oh, we're so turned on. And then we gaze in their eyes, and we touch them all the time, and we're so interested in everything they have to say. And we kiss. We tend to kiss a lot. Passionate, wet, loving, soft, hard, hot kissing. Now, what happens over time with most people is that falling in love energy dissipates, and for the vast majority of people, that does happen. But I think we can look at the behaviors we were engaging in during the falling in love period and consciously bring them to our relationship over time. And when we do that, we recreate that falling in love energy. And so kissing is in that category, as are all these other things, like eye gazing. That's why eye gazing can be such an amazing practice, because it's what we normally naturally did when we first fall in love with somebody. It's what we do when we have a newborn baby. We're like, oh, we want to touch them and kiss them, right? It's all that same falling in love energy. So again, there might be, if this is a discrepancy between partners, there's some conversations to be had. Maybe there's some things that would make kissing more fun for the partner who's not into kissing. And I would, invite you to explore that there might be middle ground, and maybe the partner who's not so much into kissing can find that they like it if it shifts or it changes. Sometimes the way one partner likes to kiss is not the same as the other partner, and we have this expectation that we should automatically know exactly what our partner wants. So maybe you want to start with like kissing 101 and actually teach each other how you like to be kissed and how the other person likes to be kissed. So there's a lot of fodder there that you can explore. Okay. Margaret says, I would like to know how to get into my being so deeply that I have an orgasm in my soul. Well, to me, what that describes is being in this deepest erotic trance that we can get to, in the most altered state that's possible, where we have an experience of absolute oneness with the universe, where we literally don't know where we end and the rest of the world begins, or our partner begins. And again, if we spontaneously, we're most likely to get to that place in a new, hot, passionate, madly in love relationship. And we can create the conditions for it, just like I was talking about the falling in love template, by creating this sacred space with sacred intention and doing these sorts of things that will help us, using the tools, our spiritual toolkit, to help us get to a place where that's most likely to occur. So that's that. All right. Let's squeeze in one more quick question and then I'll end. Any colors that are recommended is extremely beneficial for the sanctuary? Well, that's an interesting question. I think color is very individual. For me, the colors that would really work are the burgundies, maroons, magentas, lavenders, but sort of warm, uterus kind of colors. pinks and reds. But that might not be for everybody. So I really think some people might like the kind of cool blue, like of our air studio here, this cool blue kind of color. Other people might like a really warm, sunny gold color. So to me, it's not so much about the colors as like there's the best colors. It's about what's going to make you feel that you're in a space of beauty, a temple. So, all right. So on that note, I would like to invite you all to come play some more. So, this has been one of these fun freebies that we do where I get to answer your questions. And as I'm sure you've guessed already, we do online courses. And I would love to invite you to come to our next one, which is Sizzling Sacred Sex, What It Is and How to Have It. We also record them. Every time we do a live class, we record it. So we have in our library of recorded courses, classes like The Learnable Art of Female Ejaculation, Women's Anatomy of Arousal, Secrets of Female Pleasure, The Fine Art of Female Orgasm, and Libido Lost and Found. So, invite you to those. And let me just tell you a little bit more about the one we have coming up, Sizzling Sacred Sex. So our online courses include 4 live webinars, and our webinars are about an hour and a half where you get to see me and you get to see lots of fun images like a few of the ones I showed you tonight. You can also comment and ask questions if you're attending the live webinar. I give you lots of home play exercises, and particularly for the Sacred Sex course, because the courses are not really so much about what happens in the hour and a half that we're on the webinar together. It's what you do in between. So this is, a month where you get to dive deep into practicing sacredness and eroticism and pulling them together. So then I give you lots of practices and exercises and ideas for how to do that. And then, of course, if you don't make the live webinar, you can get the recorded replay. So our online courses are really an opportunity to go deep and to do it in a learning community because, like I say, not only do you get our webinars, but you get a Facebook group where we can chat and communicate, and hopefully we can really co-create an awesome learning environment. So we've been doing this for a while. We're having a lot of fun doing it, and I'd love to invite you to come to the next one. So let me make you our special offer. So the live sessions are May 18th, 25th, June 1st, and 8th. And again, you can always do the recording if you don't make it to the live ones. And here's your special offer. Instead of the regular price of $129, we're offering it for $94 for you. It's $35 off. This is a very time-limited offer, so you're going to have to move on it. This is only good until Thursday, tomorrow night. So I really invite you to come on, make the plunge, jump in. Come join us for this Sizzling Sacred Sex course. It's going to be really so much fun and I think so profound. And how are you going to do that? You need the coupon code. The coupon code is SACRED. So if you have any questions about that, you're always welcome to ask us. We are here in service to you, to your erotic experience. I hope all of you had a great time, got your questions answered, and come visit our website. Lots of resources and blogs and fun stuff like that. And I hope some of you will join us for our deep dive into the experience of the sacred erotic. So thank you all so much for coming, for your really great questions. This is Sherry Winston, and I'm wishing you all very juicy blessings.